Alrighty, I will call the November 5th Committee of the Whole to order. Roll call.
Alderperson Bellinger. Here. Alderperson Bors.
Excused.
Alderperson Close. Here. Alderperson Decker.
Here.
Alderperson Gravine. Here. Alderperson Heidemann. Here. Alderperson Menzer. Here. Alderperson Mitchell. Here. Alderperson Perella. Here. Alderperson Rust.
Present.
There are 9 present.
Alrighty, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I am looking for approval of the minutes from the October 14th Committee of the Whole meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Alder Decker made the motion, Alder Perella made the second. All in favor of approving those minutes, state aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that is approved. We will have public comment after our presentations per our agenda. So we'll move right on to item number 6, presentation by City Administrator Casey Bradley regarding the Harbor Center Marina Financial Plan, TID 21 financials, and RFP process. Administrator.
All right, good evening. Well, there we go. Scott's got it up for everyone. So we just wanted to run through kind of the RFP process, financials. There was some conversation in regards to where's the funding coming from, how will it be funded, and then where we're at financially with the marina. So on the website, you'll be able to find under the Harbor Center Marina, we have the financials on there from 2023 back to 2013. We haven't updated it since we did the master plan process, but you'll see there's a cumulative loss about 5.9 million that's accumulated in that time period. And this year is the first year that we're projecting we'll have about a $76,000 profit this year. So we're able to make some large changes financially. Obviously, we changed a lot of the services that were being provided, and we didn't have a whole lot of damage this year. I think it was rather minimal. Nick can attest more to that, but for the first time in a long time, we didn't have significant damage, which is allowing us to actually come in a healthy financial situation and start paying down some of that debt. So with the master plan, I just wanted to touch on that briefly. Smith Group was approved by council in February 5th of 2024 to do a master plan and walk through a number of stakeholder inputs. So we had an in-person listening session on Tuesday, April 30th. We had over 200 folks that attended that. We had an online waterfront and listening session and survey from May 1st to the 22nd. In-person stakeholder meetings on May 1st. Virtual marina slip holder meeting on May 30th. In-person community charrette the entire week of July 24th to the 27th. We had over 85 folks that attended that meeting. And then we had an online program preference survey and design exploration from July 11th to August 1st, all in 2024. The result of that, so we've got the graphic, and you can see in the marina plan the full plan. We had over 700 respondents to our survey. The top 3 items that were identified, what needs to be improved, food and retail opportunities was the number 1 impact or the number 1 responded area to that. Underutilization of the space, lack of public attractions and programming, and connectivity were the 2 and 3 most responded to. 78% of the respondents said when they're there to utilize the area, they're there with their family. Typically, they visit for 1 to 2 hours at a time. 68% live around 10 minutes away, and going to the park was by driving. 66% drove to the park. So very high utilization, not just of the marina, but the park as a whole. With that, the master plan came back, and there were multiple areas that were broke out in the master plan because it did cover a large area. So we wanted to kind of have some good understanding of what the public wanted on its input, or wanted to better utilize the park or that area. So kind of the driving question behind the master plan was what amenities would you like to see to better utilize the park and this public space? So we pulled out 3 of the selected areas, one being priorities within the promenade. So that would be that area up towards the north seawall. You have the number 1 priority that the public responded to was the restaurant building, the promenade, and then the education building. In the marina, the number 1 priorities were the wave attenuator and dock, upland marina building, fuel dock, and pump out. And then priorities within the park and upland, shade pavilion, gateway pavilion, and then play area was the next areas that were of highest importance. So based on that, in the 2025 budget, we had the budgeted funds to go out for RFP and start the design process. So that's where we're at now. We did the RFP in May of 2025. The city went out for RFP with a June 15th, 2025 deadline for submission. The city received 4 proposals, one from Smith Group, one from Edgewater Resources, one from Miller Engineers and Scientists, and one from AMI Consultants. The selection committee comprised of myself, Mayor Sorensen, Director Peterson, Engineer Jump, Marina Manager Worminski, Chief Montiano, Planning and Zoning Director Zeinert, Transit Director Munch, Deputy Director of Field Operations Colsty, and Marie Foss, with assistant to the city administrator, were all in the selection committee. June 30th to July 21st, the selection committee did primary and independent reviews of proposals. We scored and tallied by the purchase agent, so we independently scored them, ranked them, and then they were compiled by our purchasing agent, Bernie, in the finance department. Bernie put the scores together. The top 3 firms were invited to present to the city. On September 2nd, 2025, Smith Group, Edgewater Resources, AMI Consulting Engineers presented to the selection committee. September 3rd through the 5th, selection committee gave additional information received from consultants and anonymous voting forms. So following the presentations, we had some additional questions. Independently, they were followed up on, some reference checks were made, and then we sent out the attached selection. So each member of the committee was asked to make a selection. They're all independent of one another, so you can see everybody that voted, the date they voted, when they voted, and how they voted. So overall, all 10 members of the committee unanimously selected Edgewater Resources. So then to the funding of this project, TID 21 was adopted in 2024, adopted and amended by council on May 8th, 2025. We did an update, so that's the most recent revision to the TID. All the TID project plans and development agreements are available on the city's website, but this is the selection from TID 21, the approved project or estimated project plan list. You'll see in here that project 11 is the marina project. We budgeted $17.5 million to fund this project, which was the estimate for the areas that are eligible for utilizing TID funds. I believe we're at about 15 million is kind of the estimate for what we'd be expending in this overall program. There's a portion that would be funded through some other means. And obviously that number would come down if we're successful in going after grants and things like that. But we wanted to make sure that if this project were approved, that we would have the funding to fund that and it wouldn't be put onto the property taxpayers. So TID 21, if you go into the cash flows, you'll see that the projected cash flows will fund this project, and we would not see any cost being borne by taxpayers. Now, obviously, that cost would be brought down if we're successful in getting grants, and that's part of the contract with Edgewater, that they will also seek out grants on our behalf. So just a kind of an analysis of what we know are projects that are coming in TID 21 versus projects that are projected. So if you look in the total TID project plan, there's about $328 million of anticipated value that will be created. We're actually projecting that we're going to be over that. We had in the original project plan, we had about 22 projects that we believed would be completed as a part of throughout the life of TID 21. We're at about 7 projects already that we have development agreements on, or they're in various stages of coming to fruition. Most of them are public at this point, and a lot of them are available on the website already. So you'll see kind of how that value is going to start being created. Mayline project, obviously that work is being done already. The Kite Beach project, or Malibu Beach project, is already underway, and Mayline will be starting next spring. So those projects are well underway already. Looking at known tax revenue and projected tax revenue, so you'll see that we anticipate right now, between what's known and what's projected, that we're going to see about just under $6 million a year in TID revenue that will be going into the TID and funding public projects such as this and a variety of other things that are in that project plan. You'll notice that these numbers are all level and they level out. So you'll see that I'm projecting a lot higher assessed value, but you won't see higher property tax revenue. And the reason is I don't put inflation into any of my projections, so that's why they're level here. The reality is inflation changes these numbers each year. So just to be as conservative as possible, we're utilizing the existing tax rate, the existing projected tax rate, which we actually know now that it's a little low from what it's going to be next year. And then we don't look at really any increase in that property tax value, but we know that it will. As we saw Monday night, we're seeing about an 8% return, or an 8% increase in the taxable value. None of that's factored into this here, and that's why they're all level. So looking at what's available to pay for TID funds that are above and beyond development agreements, things like that. The blue line is the known, so we'll be looking at right around 2038. We kind of go over that $1 million a year, and then looking at projected, we kind of hit that another $1 million a year would be available in 2040. So substantial revenue that would be available to cover these costs that were projected within the TID already. And then, where do we stand on TIDs right now? This information is available on the Wisconsin Department of Revenue's website. This is their certification of TID values at the end of 2025. So we're looking at TID 16 as $32 million of increment. The red bar is the increment. TID 17 has 49 million. TID 18 has 40 million. TID 19 has 8 million. TID 20 has 43 million. TIDs 21, 22, and 23 were all created in that 24 time period. So they have a base year of January 1st, 2024. We already have $6 million of new increment in TID 21 and really don't have any projects that we were working with that are in that number. So that number will grow substantially with all these new projects coming online. TID 22, the bulk of that $5 million increment was a TID project that was approved by council. That was the Van Horn project. And then TID 23, we really haven't started. Predominantly, most of that project was going to be the Gartman farm, but we've got some other properties in there as well. and we've got about a $5 million base value in that. So overall, all of the existing TIDs are doing very well and are tracking on track or ahead of schedule. I know I covered a lot really quickly, but any questions?
Any questions from the alders? And we can always ask more questions after our next presentation. Alder Bellinger.
I would like to ask Administrator Bradley, there's been public speculation, wild numbers being thrown out, that this is going to cost excess of $50 million. Obviously, you just went through everything, and that's nowhere near being true. I guess I'd just like to put that to rest once and for all, that, you know, that this is being put out in the public on social media, that this is, you know, going to be, you know, in excess of $50 million. You went through at the last council meeting when we went through the budget, the debt. You did a big presentation on the debt. You are extremely conservative, and you have, you know, restrictions on the amount of debt that the city is going to have that is self-imposed. And I applaud you for that. So I'd just like you to just comment on that and just put it to rest once and for all.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at the cost. So if we're looking at, you know, what's it going to cost to operate the buildings that would be built here over the next 50 to 100 years, you know, we might get up to that $50 million number. The reality is what we're looking at, because we've already got those costs, right? We're already operating a marina. We've operated it, you know, pretty consistently at a loss, and our goal is to turn that around. So part of this process as we work through, and Edgewater will talk to this a lot more, but our goal here is to walk through the project and understand before anything is built if it's financially viable or not. I believe, you know, we're looking at about $15 million for kind of that marina, fixing the marina, getting that back up to speed, and then like the fuel building, things like that. And then the restaurant building would be looked at as an independent of using TID dollars or property tax dollars. So that would be separate altogether from what we're looking at. So if what will happen is, as they kind of talk through their project, there's phasing throughout their project. So the idea would be that they would be able to give us preliminary estimates like we saw with the fire station. And at each iteration through the design process, we would be able to make a determination if we would move forward. So the original design that would be done, or the initial design getting us through schematic, this allows them, and they'll kind of run through their financial analysis, but it gives them the data that they need to put together a pro forma so that we can better understand how much it's going to cost to operate that marina every year. And same thing with that restaurant building, so that we would be able to talk to potential vendors that would work and operate out of that building to make sure that we could come to an agreement that would cover costs. So there's a lot more information to put into it, but as far as costing the taxpayers $50 million to do this project, absolutely not. That's nothing that's been projected. I know overall, I think if we were doing everything, I think it was like $70 million, but we knew adopting the plan, not everything in the plan would be ultimately done. So this is one segment of that whole master plan. And, you know, ultimately it's your decision on what gets funded. And that's why we're here to talk about it tonight, is we just got that small chunk that's in there. We'll evaluate that. Even moving it, you know, obviously you're not going to vote on this tonight, but when it goes to council, even when you vote on it, that's not the final vote. There's going to be multiple votes throughout this whole process to keep moving. So that final decision on what actually gets built is probably, I don't know, close to a year away, if not more. So we have a long way. We've got a lot of analysis to do before we make a final decision on what actually gets built here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Seeing no other cues, thank you, Administrator Bradley. We will move on to item number 7. Presentation by Edgewater Resources regarding the Harbor Center Marina proposed design project scope.
second here. Very good. All righty. There it is. It shows up. Very good. 1 second. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Greg Wykamp. I'm the president of Edgewater Resources. Here today is my partner, Mike Morphy. I just want to start out by thanking the community and the committee for having selected our team. I just want to do a quick introduction of Edgewater Resources and start to respond to some of the questions that we've been asked to address. And perhaps that's going to help understand how the process will work and the level of review and control that you'll have along the way, which I think is critically important. So our team, we have a series of team members. So first of all, Edgewater Resources, we are absolutely focused on marinas and waterfront development. That's all we do. We're a full-service architectural engineering, civil, coastal marine firm, and we focus entirely on marinas and waterfronts and projects exactly like this. With us on our team is Ramble, who will help us with some of the contamination issues that might come through with the fuel system or in the buildings. Collins Engineers in terms of some civil engineering, and then Maffett Loftus Engineering, who will be our utility MEP engineer. They are hands down the most qualified marine electrical system designer in the country. We have quite a large team here. I won't go through everybody, but this was our main group of folks. All of these folks have been working together for many, many years, building projects just like this. Sometimes we've been working on this project even before joining Edgewater Resources, and I'll get to that in a little bit. We work all over the world. We've done over 400 marinas. Very quickly here in the Great Lakes, our primary offices are in St. Joseph, Michigan, and in Madison, Wisconsin. We've got satellite teams in Washington State, New York State, North Carolina, and Argentina. Most of our work, or much of our work, is focused in the Great Lakes. We've done feasibility studies all over the place. And in terms of built marinas, many built marinas. So we do a lot of feasibility studies. One of the questions we often get is, have you ever done a feasibility study that resulted in no? We say, well, you have a conflict. You're the designer. You want it to succeed. Well, of course I want it to succeed. But one of the things that's critically important to me is that we build a marina that's going to work and be financially viable. And we have many times said, this is not a good idea, or more often we say, what are the strategies that we could employ in terms of grant funding and alternate funding to make it financially feasible? I think most important as it relates to your questions and concerns in terms of construction costs is that in the last 24 months, we've built marinas, either built or are bidding currently marinas, those red ones that you see there. It's a lot of marinas. We're bidding over 90 million, either bid or constructed in the last 2 years. That's a lot of marine construction, and as you all know, the last 2 years have been really, really significant in terms of cost escalation, tariff confusion, steel, all of those things. So I would say very confidently that we have the most extensive and current database of construction costs in marine environments. We know all of the vendors, we know all of the contractors, and we have access to that. So we're going to be able to give you very, very accurate data in terms of our cost estimates. And then we've also secured over $50 million in grant funding specifically for marina projects in the last 15 years. So we have a lot of experience with that, recognizing how that works. So I'm a lifelong boater. That's how I came into this business. I love being on the waterfront. I'm a landscape architect. I come at it from a community design perspective, a big picture of what is it we're trying to do here for the community. The marina is a piece of a community waterfront. I'll talk about what that looks like, but I'm a boater. I come at it from this perspective. I'm also a business owner. Not just this consulting firm, but I'm also, I own and operate marinas. So from a financial perspective, when we make an assessment of feasibility, it's from the perspective of what I personally invest my own money in it. And I can't turn that part of my brain off. Many times you might have seen an engineering estimate. Here's the feasibility study. There's the construction cost. You got the money? Yep, it must be feasible. That's just, can we afford to build it? The question is, can Nick operate it? Can we have the funds that we need to keep the facility up and running? So this couple of projects, just for an example, this is 31st Street Harbor down in Chicago, largest marina built on the Great Lakes in the last 40 years. Navy Pier Marina, we just opened this in June. I'm one of the owners of this project, and I can assure you we started this project and had all of our construction costs ready to go in 2020, And then we had a political issue with the mayor, and it got stalled for 4 years. You can imagine the cost increase from 2020 to 2024. And so we had to completely reimagine how this marina was going to come together to respond to the realities of COVID increases, supply chain and tariffs and everything else. We're also currently doing a very similar process in Racine right now. Racine, if you're not aware, is completely rebuilding the marina. And I'd point out, there's not a fundamental problem with the age of your marina. Most marinas, floating dock infrastructure, have a lifespan of 25 to 30 years. It's a simple fact, and many of these facilities were built in the 80s. So some of the wear and tear is just a factor of age. That's not because somebody did the wrong thing. Now, you do have some very significant issues that go beyond age, and that's ice and waves. One of the things that my partner Jack Cox, who runs our medicine team, Jack and Ale Lira, our lead modeler, worked on the study that was performed here in Sheboygan by Smith Group on the ice mitigation in 2017-18. So we have the folks who actually led the study and did the study on the ice damage cause here and how to prevent it are actually partners at Edgewater Resources. So that expertise has carried over, even though it was performed while at a different firm. So one of the things that we want to focus on when we're talking about this waterfront project is, yes, it has a marina component. Yes, the marina is very important. It's more than that. It's a community waterfront. So our goals and guiding principles would always be to expand access to the waterfront from everybody in the community. One of the things that we find that there can be stress between the boaters and the non-boaters, and we should be creating harbors and waterfronts that celebrate that comparison and how those two can come together. Absolutely, to me, the biggest physical issue we have to address is the ice, waves, and sedimentation to create a more durable marina. If you're spending $200,000 or $300,000 a year repairing a marina, you will never make money. It's that simple. You're behind an 8 ball that you can't recover from. So that is fundamental. We have to solve that problem. If we can't solve that problem, I'm going to recommend don't build the marina, because you'll just find yourself in the same position later. I know we can solve that problem. My partner Jack is going to lead that effort, and he's already done the studies. We do want to respect the time and effort the community has invested in the master plan. We're not throwing out everything you did. We're starting with that and saying, okay, this was completed. Here's where we're going. What can we learn? Is there anything new information in the last year that we need to incorporate? And then finally, ensuring the marina is financially feasible and as self-sufficient as possible. That's really critically important. When people have often asked me, can a marina actually stand on its own 2 feet? I assure you, there are private marinas all over the country that stand on their own 2 feet. There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to make this marina financially viable. So the feasibility analysis, we were asked to, I could learn how to spell analysis, I suppose. Sorry about that. We're going to start with this process of what does the feasibility process look like? We start with establishing the program. The most important part of feasibility is, are you building the right thing? And when I mean the right thing in terms of marinas, do you have the right number of slips, the right size of slips, the correct amenities, the correct fuel products, all of the things that a boater is going to actually pay for. That's why we did the marina market analysis. We worked with Visit Sheboygan, looked at that process and looked at marinas, the whole area, and that study is available. If you've got questions, I can go into that. So that means reviewing the master plan and saying, okay, this is the number of slips we've had, this is what our occupancies look like, here's where the trends are going. We know all the trends data. The National Marine Manufacturers Association, which is the biggest industry association, just put out their new data, most recent data yesterday. And Wisconsin is the 5th most active boating state in the country. You're only behind Florida, of course, which is the biggest, Minnesota, Michigan, and Ohio. And so that's a big deal. You might not know that. This is the 5th most active boating state in terms of boating registrations in the country. So what we're going to do is take all of that data and say, okay, let's refine the marina layout plan to make sure that we're providing the right number of slips, not just for today, but what are the market trends, where are they going? And that's when all we focus on in marinas, and I speak at all the conferences and I write in the magazines, we're very aware of what the marina trends are. And so we're going to make sure that we're designing a marina for the next 30 years. What does that look like? That's maybe a little bit longer slips, maybe wider slips. Most important is more electrical demand. If we're all aware of it, electric boating is coming. But more to the point, most of the boats out there are really drawing much more power. So those are the kinds of things that we want to make sure that over the next 30 years that we build in the flexibility to make sure that we're not having to do a major renovation to our utility system 15 years down the road. So just talking about what that process looks like. So That's the sort of market side. What is it we're going to build? The physical feasibility analysis is to make certain that we understand the physical issues that have caused the problems that we have, and how do we manage those. And I'm going to show you some examples of another project, actually a similar scale. This is a project, it happens to be in Texas. But looking at how this works, we went through and did the marina market analysis. We determined the products that they needed in terms of slip sizes and that sort of activity. And then we developed the cost estimate, and we went through, and this is a very large project. It's $43 million, this one, and it has a big dry stack building and a bunch of other things that you don't have necessarily. But it has things that we call non-revenue generating elements, which are the breakwater, and revenue generating elements, which are the marina things. You fortunately have most of your non-revenue generating elements built. You have a breakwater, you have a protected harbor, you have that. We have to make some improvements to that, but fortunately, most of what we're funding are going to be revenue generating elements, and those have to work on their own 2 feet. So when you look at how would we analyze that, we would say, first of all, what are the market rates? What should we be charging? What have we been charging in the past? What's our occupancy? Why is our occupancy among the lowest in this region? Well, when we talked to boaters, there was rumors that the marina was going to close. Boaters are going to scatter to find a new home because they don't want to be left. It's like musical chairs. So what were the reasons? There's damage, there's shallow issues. There's a rumor that maybe we won't even have a marina in 2 years. I need to find a new home. So we'll understand those. We establish market rates. So we've proposed market rates. We can talk about that. Your market rates are relatively low. Racine has almost among the highest rates of what I call the 4 most relevant facilities. That'd be here, Kenosha, Sheboygan, and Racine. And they're actually charging $98 a foot on average, and you're charging more in the 70s. And so there's room for that improvement, even though they're about to completely rebuild their marina. So that comes back to service and program. So what we have here is how do we generate revenue estimates? So we would estimate those rates. And in this case, we said, okay, they do rate structures a little bit different. This is a rate per month. But we said, this is how many boats we have. This is what they're charging. This is the net revenue we would, or the gross revenue that we would gain here. And then we say, what's an appropriate occupancy? Your occupancy recently was in the 50s. We need to get that up into the 90s. So we would say, okay, at this point, our gross revenue is up here. Our net revenue is going to be 1.7 million, and we're going to have this gross down here of maybe 2.5. And then we look at the operational expenses. You've already done one of the most important things in terms of managing your operational costs. And there's multiple ways to operate a marina. You've tried the third-party operator, where you have an operator who's going to do it. Racine tried the licensee, where they had somebody who built the marina and ran it, and then had the fees that they paid were based off their profit. That didn't work out. That's why they've shifted to a different operation. You've gone to the most successful one, which is internal operations. You've got key staff. You've got folks who know how to run a marina and can do it very well, and you don't have to pay all of that overhead. You're not starting off with a 6-figure number that comes off the top before any dime has come in. So that's really important. So what we'll be doing is saying, okay, what are our revenues? Well, we're going to on what are our actual costs. It's great when we have an operational marina, we can say, what did it really cost to do these things? And that'll tell us our net revenue. And then as a tool, you may not use this particular methodology, but 31st Street Harbor in Chicago, for example, was funded through a revenue bond. And so as a tool to assess capacity, we would say, if we had that revenue available to service debt to do this, and I'm not saying this is how you'll do it, but that debt at an interest rate of 3% over 20 years at this particular time, that's what the rates were, would fund a capacity of about $26 million. We'll go through a similar exercise on yours saying, here are the revenues we expect, here are our construction costs, how did these things come together? And what you look at on this next page is you say, the total cost was $43 million. There was a lot of non-revenue generating costs that are funded separately. So the revenue generating costs are about $26 million. The bond funding capacity was about $26 million. And we had a deficit of about $140,000, which at this scale is a very small number at this point. But we hadn't talked about the grant funding. So in the end, this assessment told us that we had about a $1.5 million surplus. So we'll be going through very similar exercises like this, presenting to you the actual data, the actual construction costs, running through the numbers with you. Happy to sit down with anybody, with Nick, and let's challenge the numbers and make sure that we understand it. And that tells us very quickly, how do we do this? What do these grants look like? That's the boating infrastructure grant. That is a Fish and Wildlife Service grant. We have gotten, is that 28 now, Mike? I think it's 28. We're 28 for 28 in these grants. This is where I have to say that past performance is not a guarantee that we win every single grant, but we have gotten every single grant so far. We work very hard with the granting agencies and Fish and Wildlife staff to understand what they're trying to fund, and what this particular grant funds is transient boating infrastructure, and I'm very confident that Sheboygan would be an excellent candidate. What they're looking for is funding infrastructure in places that people want to go to. This is a great destination. People want to come here. They want to come visit this, as proven by the cruise ships, for example. So I feel very confident that we will be looking at 7 figures in grant funding that we'll be able to bring. So I'm kind of going fast, but I guess so far, if this makes sense, we're going to go through this process in great detail early on, and then at each stage, as we advance, we're going to revisit it and come back and go, okay, now we've gone through permitting. Well, the permitting changed X, Y, and Z, and we have to make these changes to the design. What are the new construction costs? Let's make sure our revenue numbers still work. And we'll come back to you multiple times throughout the process to make sure that we're getting that right. If we need to improve those numbers, as I said, it doesn't always come out like this. Value engineering, how do we modify the design to save money? How do we reduce non-revenue generating program? Are there things that aren't going to contribute to the financial success of the marina? They might be a nice to have, but we can't afford them right now, so we have to set that aside for the moment. Again, decreasing operational expenses, you've got the most efficient way to do it is internal operation. Let's talk about how to make that as efficient as it can. Can we increase revenue? Adjusting the slip mix, that's critical to a financial success. Did we build the right number of slips of the right size, and are we charging the right rates? So also additional, could you do storage revenue? What are the other revenue sources? So we'll go through all of those things with you, supplemental grant funding, and then of course phasing. So that process is something we do. And again, as an owner of private marinas that have succeeded, I go through that process, and it's inherent in everything we do because it has to work. Right? There's nobody gonna stand behind us at Navy Pier and come bail us out. We make it work or we fail, and that's not an option. We're gonna update this at every phase of design. We're gonna come back to you again and again on this to make sure that we're all on the same page. So any questions on that before we jump into, there were some questions about our fee breakdown. Are there any questions on the financial analysis process or concerns that we can address?
All right, any questions? Alder Bellinger.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate this information. I'm impressed by what I've seen so far with your firm. I just was wondering, with the feasibility studies that you present to communities like us, in actuality, after year 1 through 5, after the completion of the marina, how closely does your feasibility study or projections match, what's really going on after?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the tool that we pay most attention to is occupancy, because when we focus on doing the market analysis to say this is who we project is going to come and how long will it take. So we're very conservative in our estimates, just our nature. So for example, Port of Rochester Marina is a marina Mike and I built, and it was a brand new marina, did not exist. It wasn't a renovation, it was a brand new marina. We actually excavated 200,000 cubic yards out of a parking lot and built a marina in a former parking lot. It's pretty cool. We looked at the market analysis and showed there was a demand for 70-foot and even 80-foot slips in Rochester, New York. And people are like, there's not even one of those boats here. There's 3 of them on the whole entire lake. Those were actually the first slips to fill in. We met with the other local marinas and did that. So that performance, we projected a 3 to 5 year absorption rate, and it was 100% full in 1 year. So when we go through this process, we have so far been quite close and typically faster than we project. We have had scenarios where we've actually projected, I'll just show you a great example. Go back to 31st Street Harbor, this one. So this one was built and constructed and opened in 2012 or 11, 13. This is 1,000 berths. That is a really big marina. We didn't do the market analysis. That was done by a different firm. At the time, they had an 870 name waiting list. We actually met with the Chicago Park District and said, that's great, you have an 870 name waiting list, you're building a 1,000 slip marina. When you have an 870 name waiting list that's 7 to 8 years long to get onto the marina, our advice to you is that you have about an actual number of boaters is about 300. Simply because the reality is if it's 7 years down the road, you might not even have a boat. You put your name on the list, I'll think about buying a boat when they call me in 5 years. So we recommended to them, said, listen, you've got 1,000 slips. What we would recommend you do is you need to build a breakwater, it goes in that location, but build, and the slip size is the smallest to biggest down here. we recommended, based off the market demand, build about a third of the marina. And I remember the park department staff were like, "You're nuts. We have all these names, all these people who are going to come in here. We're going to fill it. It won't be full in 2 years, but it's going to be fine." I said, "You're going to have about 300 boaters, because that's the reality of what you have out of your 6,000 slip system." And they chose to build the whole thing, and for different reasons. That was how their funding stream worked. They chose to build it. And in the first year, they had 312 boats. And in the second year, they had about 320. And it just takes time. I would have much rather them come in and build 280. I'd rather disappoint a couple of dozen boaters than to suddenly have, in their case, 400 or 500 empty slips that sat empty for several years. Now they're much fuller now. They're not 100% full. But to my perspective is, I think we have a really good understanding of what waiting lists actually mean, and we've got some good experience with that. So,
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Alder Close.
Earlier, you brought up the grant writing and the 2 grants that you had potentially lined up for the project. I was wondering if you could go into more detail, and if I'm jumping the progress right now, just are those the 2 grants that are currently available? Are there more in your sites?
sure, absolutely. Those are 2 federal grants. So let's start, the grant funding we typically get is either state level or federal level. So the federal level grants are typically through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And of course, with all the grants hit the brakes in January this year, they were actually delayed, but they're still fully active, which is great. We thought that this program was done. It was announced 2 months late, but it's fully active and they're moving ahead. So that's great news. So those two grants are the Clean Vessel Act grant, which will pay for a pump out, which is a relatively small number. It's $40,000-$50,000, but I will take $40,000-$50,000 of free money every single day. And that'll get us our new pump outs that we need. The boating infrastructure grant is more, as I said, for transient boating infrastructure, and some portion of the marina will be dedicated to transients, and I would expect that we'll be able to get to $1.5 million. That process, we submit those applications to the state, and we've worked very closely with the state of Wisconsin on other grants. We have really good relationships with those folks. My wife is also one of my partners, and she does all of that grant funding. We've gotten multiple grants for a marina in Green Bay. South Bay Marina. And so that is a process that is absolutely one I recommend, and I'm again, very sure or very confident that we'll have a good competitive grant there. The other ones are at the state level. And our Madison team, one of our team there is Susan Winnan. She was a city employee with Oak Creek and managed a lot of their grant funding programs. She knows all of the grant folks on the state side, but one of the big ones is the recreational boating grant. We applied for a $500,000 grant for the state of Wisconsin for a project in Sturgeon Bay we're doing right now. And so there's a whole list of state grants that we would dive into. I can get Susan to go through all of them in great detail. So,
Just to follow up. Also, can you go into how your operations around grant writing work? Are they part of the fee structure that is being proposed here, or
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question.
how your grant writing operations work? Are you as part of the fee structure that's listed here on the screen, or is it a supplemental thing that's done afterwards? Do you build it into your project plans?
Right. We have I fully expect that we'll be writing a boating infrastructure grant, a CVA grant, and a Wisconsin REC grant. So those are the 3 that we've got built into the fee structure. If there's more than that, we can have a conversation about it. Our fee structure, and Mike's about to go into this in great detail. At a project at this scale, the establishing the fee is, it's all about the scope of work, right? What exactly are we going to build? And one of the things that's going to be early on in our process over the next 3 or 4 months is really tying in and going through what's called the schematic design process and going, okay, we have a master plan, it looks like this, we've met with the community, we've done all these things, there's going to be some refinements, really dial that in and understand it. If there's a major scope change at that point, we would address it at that point. But that's one of the key first steps, is to make certain that we're not assuming every fee based on what we think the project will be. Of course, we've given you numbers based on that, on the projection, but there will be a process, a point here probably in January and February where we sit back and go, okay, here's what we've learned, here's what we projected, here's the construction costs as we see them based on our experience. Let's take a firm, deep breath and reassess this project and go, what exactly are we going to build and what funding sources are we going to pursue? So I expect those 3 are part of it. If we need to go through several more, we can generally fit that in. If it's something really special, we may have to revisit that. But there's going to be a point here, I would say, in January, February, where there's a very firm reassessment of the program, and it's to be very defined. We're going to build X, Y, and Z, and we expect the costs to be, in this range.
Thank you.
Seeing no other cues, we will move on.
So we've got the question on fees. We can go through this as much detail as you like. Mike, why don't you hop up, and Mike will be your, so I'm the principal in charge. Mike is going to be a project director, and he's going to be here every single day, but you're going to see me at every single public meeting, every single conversation. You'll see the both of us all the time. Mike?
Thank you. All right, now I get the exciting part. Talk about our fees a little bit and how we came to these fees. First of all, I just want to mention, in the RFP, we had an initial phase outline, and we looked directly at the Marina Master Plan and pulled the costs out for those elements. And that's really where we started to evaluate what's the cost of the project being proposed and how do we base our fees off that. So a lot of the stuff we have here is an estimate based on what we think that project program was and is. And I think, as Greg outlined, there's that timetable between now and the beginning of the end of the winter where we're going to identify what that actual initial phase is going to be and how we design to it. So what you see on the screen is the overall fee proposed here, separated into 4 primary tasks. First one being schematic design, the second one design development, then we get into construction documents and bidding and contracts and all those things. And then as we move to construction, there's a construction administration phase. Going into that a little bit further, at schematic design, this is a really key step in the beginning of the project. As Greg noted, really looking at the inspiration for the project and the process that the community went through over the past year plus to create the Marina Master Plan. And going back to that data and pulling out what's the available data that we have, what additional data do we need to collect, topography, bathymetry, geotechnical, and all those good things. And then coming up with a basis of design that we're going to be designing around. Part of that process is going to include ongoing stakeholder outreach to make sure that we understand the community's wants, desires, and we're able to address those things. And then we get into actually designing those components. So taking the Marina Master Plan, starting there, and then building off of that to determine exactly how those things are going to look. And then lastly, when that process is reaching some kind of a conclusion, then we'll get into the financial analysis that Greg outlined earlier. So looking at, now we have an idea what the construction cost estimate is. Now we know what we think the revenue that it's going to produce is going to be, and then does that make sense? And that's really the first step in looking at that financial analysis. Timeline-wise, we've talked about this with other committees a couple weeks ago, but about 2 weeks to get the project kicked off and going. This is really just identifying all the parts and pieces, making sure we know who the stakeholders are, making sure we know who we're communicating with, establishing project goals. Then we'll get into inventory, the existing conditions. What do we have? What do we not have? And as I mentioned, some of this data collection, surveys, and geotech.
That is your harbor, by the way. That's from the study on the ice damage from 2017-18.
And then from there, we start to refine that. We work with the community to figure out how we want to change things, what needs to be modified, anything from the docks to the buildings to the upland space. And at that point, we again look at that financial analysis. Is everything going to make sense to build? Once we can confirm that with everybody and we know we're on solid footing, we've got a conclusion as far as the overall direction of the project. Then we get into design development. And this is a really key task in the critical path of the project. As you know, anything we're going to do out in the water is going to require permits. In order to submit those permits, we need to get our design to about a 30% level. And so this is a big part of what would happen early in 2026. So looking at the demolition and environmental for the buildings, designing the upland space, the parking, public spaces, the promenade, utilities, infrastructure, and then beginning to outline the programs for each one of those buildings. What does the size look like? What's the program? What are the needs? Where do they need to be? All those things. And then, of course, this is where we're really digging into the marina design part of it. What makes sense as far as number of slips, the slip mix, how do we deal with the ice issue? And maybe that has some combined result with accommodating cruise ships in the future. Lastly, once we think we have that picture all together, we're again looking at what's the revenue, what's the cost, and do those two things make sense? Coming back here to this group to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Something to quickly add is, we didn't call it out specifically, but there's very, very detailed cost estimating here, and this is one of the most important cost estimating points, is because we're getting to a specific level of detail. There's a question about what is a contingency and where does that come from? So contingency budgets, and when you have in your master plan budgets, I believe the contingency was at a 30% level. And so that's a cost estimate, and said, here's a 30% contingency. And what that's meant to be is to account for the unknowns. And so when we go into this process, when we get through schematic design, we'll have new numbers, but that schematic design contingency will be like 20 or 25% because we've answered a lot of questions. And then when we get to this level, it might be 15 or 20%, and it continues to tighten up as we get more detail. We always go into construction with at least a 10% contingency, because inevitably you start drilling holes in the bottom of a lake, you're gonna find something. So that's kind of one of those processes that's out there. We didn't call it out specifically, but that contingency will continue to tighten up as we get more and more detailed information.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, so what are we doing during that phase? Here's a little bit more things to explain the detail. The architecture part of this is primarily focused on the fuel building and also the marina administration building. So that's what over the next 6 to 8 weeks during design development we'd be focused on. And that design starts to take shape. You start to see what the exterior is going to look like and what the interior space is going to be. We would look at obviously the promenade and the upland space and just continue to develop what these plans are going to look like. We would start to look at grading. We'd look at an overall grading plan where we're going to send stormwater, how we're going to deal with it, and then start to look at, do we have enough potable water supply? Do we have the right electrical feed to the site and those types of things? So we would continuously go through that and refine it and move on to some of the marina parts of the project. And I think really during this period, this 8 to 12 weeks of design development, this is where the hardcore modeling is going to happen with regard to ice. We're really going to have to look hard at what are the right solutions, what do they cost. Oftentimes there's a inverse relationship between the amount of risk that you're willing to accept and the cost of a project. Hopefully here we can optimize that, minimize the cost of any modifications that need to happen, and try to figure out how we can protect the docks. But that process would end with really getting that joint permit application submitted to the state of Wisconsin and to the Army Corps of Engineers. And then that starts a ticker. We have maybe 6 months, maybe it's 3 months, or maybe it's a year before we get those permits. That can be somewhat unpredictable. We've got a lot of instances where that's maybe 1 to 3 months, but in some cases it's a year or longer. So at that point, we go through that permit process, we respond to the agencies. There may be special studies or maybe specific things that they need to know that we don't have yet. But when we're reaching the end of that process and we have indications from both federal and state agencies that we're close to permit issuance, that's the right time to come back and start construction documents, final engineering. So this is the stage where we get into the real detail of identifying every little piece of the design and preparing documents that are suitable for construction. So that's where the bulk of our heavy engineering and architecture work is going to happen. And so here you see a breakdown by those major 4 pieces. You've got demolition and environmental. And again, this is all based on the fact that we're taking down those 2 buildings and building 2 new ones. But we may at some point earlier in the process determine that that's not the direction. Yes, sir? No, you're good.
Where are we at with the time frame at this piece?
So this is looking at probably midsummer or fall starting this, depending on permits.
Okay,
And
thank you.
there is a slide in here with some schedule I'll get to.
One of the reasons that we submit permits at the 30% level instead of finished engineering, people say, well, don't you have to have everything designed to get your permit? And that's partially true. At the 30% level, we're able to document all of the impacts that the permitting agencies are most concerned about. Amount of dredging, amount of fill in the water, coverage, impacts to species and all that. Every time we go through permitting, there's changes. It's just part of the process. We want to get to 30%. We've got enough information where they can give us that feedback, and we haven't done a ton of engineering that we now have to undo. And that's why we do that process in that order. And the agencies appreciate that, because the last thing they want to do is fight with us about something and have us resist it because we don't want to spend money changing drawings. We want to have a conversation about substantive environmental concerns that we can address and mitigate, not, well, gosh, it's going to cost me $50,000 to redo the drawings. That's not a productive use of time or money on anybody's part, and that's why we do it that way.
Thank you.
So here's a little bit more detail on what we're doing as far as architecture and engineering, bid documents with all the things that we were talking about earlier. And this is going to assume that, with the architecture packages, it could be one bid set or two bid sets. It just depends on exactly what we're doing at that point. And then we'll get into the detail on the marina side. Here's some drawings there, but probably to get through all of the marina electrical design, MEP, fire protection, all that good stuff, the buoyancy calcs, and maybe a dock pre-qual package, that's about 3 to 4 months. Then we get into bidding. This is also part of this phase of the project. And we anticipate 5 or 6 bid packages are likely here, assuming that entire scope of work is constructed. So one for building demolition and remediation if it's required. One for the upland site infrastructure, so this might be parking and stormwater, potable aqua. Also looking at stormwater, how do we deal with that? And then another package for architecture. I mentioned that there may be 1 or 2 for the 2 buildings. And then, of course, a package for the marina and fuel systems. So there's a potential that the coastal package may need to be a separate one, depending on the path that's selected there. But at least 5 bid packages. There's a ice construction photo from 31st Street, driving some piling while they still had to clear ice out of the harbor. And then we get to task 7, which is the construction administration phase. So this is where we jump in and get things moving. There's a lot of upfront work as far as submittal reviews and pre-construction meetings and that type of thing. During this process, we'd also be looking at requests for information that come from the contractor and biweekly coordination meetings. So we anticipate a pretty long construction process. Hopefully portions of this project overlap each other so we can combine those meetings, but we'll have to see how things lay out. As of right now, based upon the construction costs that were projected in the Marina Master Plan, we've kind of broken things down, by major component, and that's really how we came upon those numbers. Then we get done, we throw a big party, and everybody's happy. As far as a schedule, this is kind of what that looks like. So this has been updated to represent the end of the year here. That very top of the screen up there, project initiation, we would get moving on that right away. We'd like to get moving on that, if approved, pretty quickly here to get data collection started and to get some of the community outreach started. Because the goal would be by February, March timeframe to arrive at a place where we have that schematic plan. So we want to refine what the current plans are and try to get to a point where we're all on the same page about the general direction of the project. And the reason that that's really important is if we get to that point and you skip down to the marina portion, we need to then get into some of that preliminary engineering, design development. And that is the critical path for getting permit applications submitted. And that's where you end up in this long lead time item, anywhere, again, from 1 to 12 months before we can actually move forward on final design and bidding. Now, aside from the marina portions of the project, the buildings, the fuel service and marine administration building, the site and the upland work, that stuff can get moving potentially into design development early in 2026. And so we think it's possible that we could be under construction on those components over the winter of 26 and 27. And there's some arrows up here for the buildings that could slide in one direction or another depending on the direction that we all choose and feel makes sense with the marina. But in our minds, this is kind of how it lays out based on what we know today. And as Greg talked about, these green symbols here, our financial feasibility checks. So we've got one right at the beginning when we're starting to talk about schematic designs. We've got one as we're kind of wrapping up on the conclusion of that and starting our permit process. And then one as we're getting through permitting, we acknowledge any changes that might have to happen. And then we look at it before we begin final design. So a couple different check-in points to say, does this still make sense? Do these numbers still balance out the way they need to be?
One quick thing on the scheduling. We have 100 days of marina use in the Great Lakes. We'll make absolutely sure that the marina is open for those 100 days. It's super important for us to never do that and have the marina closed for any 1 minute longer than necessary. We might close a little early at the end of 1 year, maybe close in mid-September instead of end of October so we can get going. We want to be open Memorial Day. And so same thing with these buildings. One of the keys with all the schedule is going to make certain that, if we take a fuel building down in the fall, that there's a new fuel building up and ready to go in the spring, and the same thing with operations. So that's one of the things that sort of there's two externals, is just fitting into those construction windows and making sure that that works. So.
Just before you get back to it, Alder Perella had a question, and Alder Close. Alder Perella.
Thank you, Chair. So there is, when I look at the fee structure, I have hard time understanding so just as a premise, in my mind, as far as the marina goes, we have needs and we have wants. That is the way I look at it as of right now. I evolved in an approach towards the marina project in the last 4 or 5 years now as something I want to be more and more cautious with. I would love to have a vibrant, rich, full of life marina. However, the historical data doesn't point that direction as far as Sheboygan. But that's my assessment of it, which doesn't have much, it's anecdotal. My question is, could we have a breakdown of this fee schedule based on needs, what is absolutely necessary for the marina, which we all want to survive, no? And so could we have a breakdown, a very simple, clear breakdown based on what is necessary and what is what are the nice to haves? I'm not challenging the fee structure or the total at all, but it is a huge chunk of money, and I would like to have more consideration into the details of what I feel as of right now. It is something I'm interested in or not. I cannot distinguish right now. I know we have not decided yet as a common council what is that we are going to approve or not. And this fee schedule doesn't help much with that either.
If I understand, so just make sure I understand your question correctly. So part of the question is, so there's all the things in the master plan, right? And I call that the ice cream conversation. What kind of ice cream you like? Oh, chocolate and mint chocolate chip and vanilla and whatever it is. And there's all of that. And then there's the vegetables that nobody wants to eat the vegetables to get there, which is what can we afford? How much revenue are we going to generate? And what are the things we absolutely need? Am I understanding that correctly? It's sort of a conversation of there's all the things that would be lovely to have, but what do we have to have? Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
part of it.
So the process, as we've outlined it, of how do you answer that question really comes down to that first initial schematic design phase. That's where we're going through. So what I'd like you to consider, think about if we jump back to that process. Where did that go? Right about here. Right in here. This is the process where we evaluate that. And so we have to do enough work to put numbers to all of those things. So we can say, okay, the marine administration building is going to cost this much, and the docks are going to cost this much, and the fuel is going to cost this much, and the breakwater that's going to protect us from ice is going to cost this much. And then we put priorities to those and say, 100% I would say this. If we can't afford to solve the ice problem, I'm not going to recommend you build the marina behind it, because you'll be right back in the spot 10, 15 years from now. It's just not a good solution. We have to solve that. So establishing those priorities, what we're going to come back to you with at the end of this phase is that very detailed list. When I do community outreach and design visioning process, I'm the bummer guy. I'm the guy that puts price tags and everything and says, we all need to understand what this stuff costs. And now we can establish priorities. And so getting to that place where you can all, because collectively you'll be making that final decision, with the boards and various feedback and the community feedback, and say, these are our priorities. And you can say, this is a must-have. I must have ice protection. I may not need building A, whatever. Maybe the field building could be saved. I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas. At that point, I said we take a big deep breath and go, now where are we going? And the fees that we've outlined here, you might cut a whole $5 million piece of it, and of course the fees will go down accordingly. So my answer to your question, to get to the place where we can effectively tell you what those costs are so you can make a good decision about the priorities you collectively as the council, we need to get through this part of the process. And fundamentally, if we're there, you can say, this is what we're going to do, and the fees would adjust. Another thing, when you see these numbers on here, they're big round numbers, right? Because we're set up as what's called a time and materials budget. So we're establishing a budget that's what we think is realistic, but you're paying for what we actually do, right? We have our nice 8% profit built into our numbers and at our hourly rate. So when you pay us, if we end up completing, let's say for stakeholder outreach, I've put a budget in there for 35 to have a lot of meetings and meet with people. If we have $20,000 worth of meetings, that's what the bill's going to be. So it's not that these are a lump sum that no matter what else you decide, that's the number. The numbers are going to be tied to get through this process, set your priorities, decide exactly what you're going to build. We adjust the fee from there. And once we get into it, you're going to end up paying for what the actual work takes. So I'm not certain if that's answering your question in detail. I don't know how to answer the priority question until we get through this process, because I can't give you the numbers without having done that work. So I'm not trying to avoid it, but that's the point.
No, you were very helpful. But just to clarify, that means that the only piece that we are truly committing tonight, if we get to vote on this, is basically $200,000 for you to work on the schematic design, after which we decide the next step. So is that correct? Am I understanding you correctly? Of these 3 million and 300 almost, that's what we are going to commit ourselves.
That's really what typically happens is they say on a project this scale, we're going to approve the whole budget. What we're going to do is have task authorizations to move forward, and so you can come back and say, okay, we're happy with the results of task 1. We're not going to authorize you to proceed with task 2. So it's typically authorized as the whole thing with, okay, you get to that point, you stop until we get an email or a message from Marie or somebody and says, now you may proceed to task 2. We don't go barreling along and tell you how much money you're spending. We get to a place where we're done with this phase, take a stop, we do the analysis, we make a decision, do you want to proceed or not proceed? Then that is entirely your call. However you choose to authorize it is entirely up to you.
And since we are having this open conversation, I was wondering, since you are the experts, no doubt, if you had to, as of right now, if you had to choose 2 indispensable components of these potential projects, what are those 2 elements?
A modern dock system with proper utilities.
Can you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you please repeat?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. A modern dock system. Basically, your docks are so old that trying to fix them is no longer cost effective. They're past their useful life. You could nurse them along for a long time, but it's a nightmare. Ask Racine. A new dock system that's going to be functional with proper utilities and an ice mitigation system to keep them in place. Those are the. If you left everything on shore alone, you could probably get by with your fuel for a while. I don't know how the age of the tanks. We'd have to look at that if they're past their license. Can you stretch the building for 10 more? I don't know. That's up to you. We can talk about it. But you'll never get out of the financial process trying to nurse along these docks more, because it'll just get more and more expensive. The projection for this winter, I hate to break it to you, they're calling for a 2013, 2014 winter. It's going to be a lot of ice. On the bright side, it might be so much ice that it locks in and nothing moves. So that would actually be a good thing. So, but those are the 2 fundamental, to me, that's absolutely critical. The rest of it is probably, I wouldn't say optional, but if I had to set a priority, those are the first 2.
Very good, thank you. I have another question, but I can wait for someone else.
All right.
Alder Close.
Thank you, Chair. On task 3, you mentioned the consensus building process. Could you go into more depth about what the public can expect, how they can give input into that, how you'll be using the input that's already been given from the charrette, things like that?
Absolutely. Number one, we will absolutely respect the process that led to this point. We're not starting over by any stretch of the imagination. We're going to go through all that. I'll read it all in great detail. And one of the things that we're going to do is a visioning session. First of all, it will be me personally leading every one of those meetings. I will come to all of them because that's one, I love it. I love this process of discovering the solution. I'm not here to tell your community what the right answer is. We're here to discover it together, and I'm going to facilitate a process where we explore those alternatives and say, this is what we want to do. And so we would do things like, starting with what you have, and we might look around and say, okay, well, let's look at what other marinas have done, for example, and how that might work, and we'll show pictures of things. Do you like how this works? We know we need to have this ice mitigation strategy. Well, what does that look like? Is it a public pier that everybody can get out on, or is it a pier that's designed to take the cruise dock? And we'll talk about those options. We do individual stakeholder sessions. I call it the slow is fast. We will take probably at least 2 days, maybe 3, where I will sit and meet with our team in half an hour sessions with every stakeholder group who has a specific interest in this project. It'll be boaters, it'll be the staff, it'll be the first responders, everybody who's got to have a say in how this thing operates. We do that listening early on. Tell me what worked for you in the master plan. What are your concerns? I'll go through that process. We'll also do a public visioning session, which is just hey, bring me up to speed. You guys spent a year doing this. Here's what I see. Let's make sure I'm on the same page. One of the really important things that we do in the process is my email will be up there. We do it's a super simple little thing. We hand out a note card and a pencil to every single person who shows up in a public meeting. There are a lot of people who are not comfortable doing what we do, standing up in front of 50 or 100 people and sharing their opinion, especially when maybe it's not a popular opinion. When I started asking people to leave me a note, I got more great feedback. I've been doing this for 12 or 13 years now. We want that process. Everybody's voice matters, not just the loudest. It's really important to me. So we'll go through that process, and then we'll have check-ins. You'll notice in each one of those phases, the first line was continuous community involvement. Even if it's just an update. Hey guys, this is what you said. Here's what we're doing. Quick update, questions, comments, ideas, are we on the right track? So that process will be very intensive over the next 2 or 3 months, and then it will be continuous updates whenever's appropriate, every 2, 3, 4 months, whatever's appropriate. But I'll be doing those personally and leading that process.
Great, thank you.
Alder Gravine.
Do I just, okay. Sorry, I'm new to this, so.
No worries.
I was, this might be a little off the wall, but you had touched on the fact of electric boats.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, is there any projection out there of when we would start seeing maybe more of those in the works?
They're here already. They're already here. I would say, so I'm a solar energy, renewable energy. I've got 26 kilowatt hours of storage in my house and heat pump everything, and I'm driving an EV, have been for 5 years. So I'm super into all this. What's really, really critically important is that we build in the flexibility for what's coming without spending a tremendous amount of money building infrastructure that isn't needed right now. So that's really important, and that's the fundamental thing that's going to, electric boating is about where electric cars were in about 2007 or 8 or 9, right? So right now there's a bunch of boats that are very high end. You can get a ski nautique that's a $200,000 ski boat. You want the electric version, it's $350,000. Same exact boat, just costs an extra $150,000 for a cool powertrain. They're already out there. What we design into our electrical system is capacity for charging a small number of boats, because let's get real, we might have 1 boat that's electric powered right now, and in 2030 we might have 3. In 2040 we might have 50. That's a big difference. So what we need to do is, how do we design the system where I can accommodate them just using my standard shore power right now with a 50 amp supply, and that works great, and we will know that I can Nick can say, all right, I got 10 guys who have e-boats, I'm going to put you on that pier, this pier, this pier. I'm going to spread you out so that the load fits into our load demand. At a point in time, we may want what's called essentially a supercharger. And rather than us paying for it, we're going to call Aqua Superpower, who is in the business of selling electrons. And they'll say, hey, Nick, can I put my charger over here on your dock? And I'm going to rent that dock space, and I'm going to pay to put the infrastructure in, and I sell the electrons to your customers. So that's what we're doing. Gary Loftus, our electrical engineer, has done probably over 100 electric boat charging stations around the world. So that's a process that's coming. We will absolutely not design it that every boat could be electric, because over the next 30 years, we'll see a lot. Over the next 5 years, we might see one. So that's the process.
Thank you.
Alder Perla, did you want to ask your next question?
Yes, please. Based on your experience, what is that? Do you have in mind marinas for cities or comparable cities our size? Mostly our size, our type of, our demographics, our average household income, something very comparable. Do you have any? And are those marinas, if you do have some, are those marinas profitable? I was surprised when you said, people always ask, can marinas be really profitable? Because we have this problem, right? We have a marina now for 30 years, and it has not been profitable. And so, and you said something about, absolutely, there are private marinas that are very profitable. So what did you mean for private marinas? As, for me, this would not be a private marina. So do you have non-private public marinas that actually, demonstrate profitability?
Sure. So first of all, a private marina, Navy Pier Marina, the one I showed you a picture of, that is privately owned. That's one right here. Mm-hmm. Privately owned, privately funded. We did get a boating infrastructure grant for $1.5 million, but the rest of the other $17 million to build that marina was completely privately funded. So that's a privately owned facility that will continue to operate that way. There are all throughout the region. So South Bay Marina in Green Bay, for example, we're working with them. That's a successful private marina. You look in Sturgeon Bay, some of the highest rates in this market, all private facilities. When I say so privately, I mean privately owned. It doesn't mean they're, they welcome the public. They're public in that sense, but they're privately owned. As it relates to Sheboygan, the most relevant communities, Kenosha, Racine, Port Washington, similar in scale. Milwaukee's a bit bigger. What you have is, and that's what the market analysis was about, was trying to establish, okay, why are they able to charge something over here, and why is our rate so much lower than Racine's, when Racine is arguably in the same or worse condition from a dock infrastructure standpoint? Okay, let's understand why that is. If we go to Kewanee and see what they're building, we can all immediately understand why Kewanee is able to charge what they're charging, which is very low, and their occupancy is low, because the dock infrastructure is pretty awful, and Kewanee is not Sheboygan as a destination. So I think the best examples of what Sheboygan can and should be is going to be more like where Racine is going, where Port Washington is in terms of demand, where Kenosha is. Certainly the Milwaukee ones are, but that's Milwaukee. There's so many people there that I don't use that as the same level. So I see that as very good examples. So the other key thing in terms of what we call seasonal boaters, those are boaters who are here all the time. That's, I'm here, I'm leasing a slip. A transient boater is, where am I coming from? And what drives transient demand is the place a cool place to go? Do I want to go there specifically? Or is it between where I am and where I want to go? And is it a convenient place for me to stop? You have both of those, right? Green Bay might be a cool, interesting place to go, but it is not on the wave to anywhere except Appleton. Right? So you're not going to go to Green Bay, same as like Traverse City in the Grand Traverse Bay. It's 18 miles at the bottom of a bay. You're not on your way anywhere. I never go there in my sailboat because I'm so slow. I'm going to go to Leland every time. So you have both a destination that's desirable with the golf courses and all the things that are here in town, and you're in between Chicago and everything in Door County. You've got every boater that's coming and transiting the west side of the lake is going to come right past here. So I think you have a lot of strengths, and that's fundamental to the boating infrastructure grant review process. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but...
Yeah, so just to go back to the basic of the question is, there are public marinas that are profitable.
Yeah, that stand on their own 2 feet, absolutely. West Basin Marina, where I keep my own boat, has they're making maybe $1,000 of profit per slip a year. I don't know what the exact number is this year in recent years, but that's what it was a few years ago when we checked. So the key to that is if a private operator can build a marina like this one that you see here, if we can build that marina and everything that you see in there is revenue generating with the exception of that floating attenuator. That's this thing right here. Everything else is essentially revenue generating. And so we know that we can charge enough money to pay for all of that. That basic math is the same in a public facility. I've actually written articles. One of the biggest problems that public facilities have is they're afraid to charge market rates. All right, are the boaters in the room? I'm going to upset the boaters for now. I'm a boater. I pay $4,700 a year for my 40-foot slip in St. Joseph, Michigan. It's a great slip. It's one of the best locations of the marinas. It's a fixed dock, which is, I'd much prefer a floating dock. It's not the newest marina, but it's a great location. There's 103 names on the waiting list for my slip. If they were to tell me tomorrow, I'm a cheap Hollander and a sailor. As a sailor, I think the marina should pay me because my boat is so beautiful. You can come look at my boat and come enjoy this view. So anything more than you paying me is way too much because I'm a sailor and I'm going to complain. All of us boaters complain about how much we charge. When we do the surveys and we ask boaters to rank their priorities of what they're looking for, cost is, nobody will admit this in this context, cost is never near the top of the list. Availability of a great slip in a great location is the top of the list. And are the boaters around me of a similar quality, just like a neighborhood? If I'm on a dock and there's a boat next to me that looks terrible and they got their laundry hanging out and it's falling apart and there's a blue tarp on it, I'm embarrassed, right? So you don't have that and it keeps it away. So my point in all this is the marina I'm in, if they told me that they were going to bump my rate $500 next year because we had to do an electrical program upgrade, I'm going to complain and I'm going to argue and I'm going to yell and I'm going to whine and I'm going to write the check because I want my slip, right? And so we need to build a proper marina that has all of the proper amenities. And I'll tell you this, this is not building something extravagant. When I say a modern marina, this is municipal quality. This is not a 5-star, it's not a Ritz. It's a beautiful quality dock that's safe and stable underfoot. The utilities work. When I plug it in, I have the power that I need. When my kid falls in the water, he doesn't get electrocuted. I'm not saying that as a joke. That is a very real thing. There are marinas like your electrical system here, I promise you, is way out of date. And what we will build in the new one is not anything special. It's just all of the current modern standards so that electric shock drowning is no longer the risk that it is today. So those are the things that boaters are willing to pay for. It's not extravagant. It's very high quality. It'll give you a 30-year great life. And it's exactly the right level that a municipal facility should offer in terms of quality, durability. Durability is the key. It has to last and it has to work.
Thank you.
Alder Heidemann.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for giving us this additional information. And Alder Grazi was getting to a number where I thought we were going to get.
I'm sorry.
We need a marina in the city of Sheboygan. I understand that, okay? But we're going to be approving $3.4 million. If I was going to take, and like I said, we don't have that breakdown as to, and what I would be comfortable with was, what are we going to get, or how much is it going to cost us to get the marina Sheboygan needs? I'm not talking about the additional buildings and everything else. But, you're a very educated guy. What's that going to cost us? Just off the top of your head, do you think that when we're going to spend $3.4 million and there's these other things that are added in there that I'm not necessarily concerned with because it doesn't directly affect the people that use the marina? Okay. I mean, you can think that it does, but in my case, and I don't own a boat, I guess I don't want to see a bunch of design going into that park in that area that we really don't need to have, but someone's going to all of a sudden, well, we have to use up $3.4 million. You know, this is government.
I got you.
Okay,
Yep.
so just give me that figure that I'd be comfortable with to say, hey, listen, when we're all done spending whatever you tell me, we're going to have a fully functional marina.
Yep. May not be a satisfactory answer, but it's generally 12 to 15% of the construction cost. And so if we have a marina if the construction cost, do we have an estimate off the top of our head of what the marina was going to cost? Like the dock specifically? Okay. All right. So let's just say if the marina cost was $10 million, you're looking at it's going to cost us between 10 to 15%, 12 to 15% to get that done. And that's soup to nuts, permitting, getting it done through the construction administration process, construction oversight. That's the cost. There's a lot of hand-holding of one, you want to be able to point the finger at us if I design it and it doesn't work. You want to be able to call that guy and go, fix your problem. And so that's part of it. And then following through the whole process to make sure it gets built properly. And then finally, all the way through what we call commissioning to make certain that exactly what you paid for, you got. And when I say commissioning, that's primarily the electrical system. Your biggest liability in a marina operation is your electrical system. Are you familiar with electric shock drowning? Is that a term you've heard? Okay.
I'm an electrician.
Okay.
Yeah, you should know.
Here's my instant lecture on this. This is key. And the reason this is critically important is because it's the follow-through that matters. We actually require this. If you won't allow us to commission it, I won't do the project, because it's that critically important to the safety of your boaters. What that means is electric shock drowning is if stray current gets into the water. We all think that fresh water is a great conductor of electricity, and it does move electricity, but salt water is a great conductor of electricity. Your body is salt water. So if there's stray current in the water from either a boat, it's typically a boat, and it goes to that person, if there's 30 milliamps, which is a tiny amount of electricity, you're paralyzed, you sink and drown fully conscious. Let that sink in. You've heard those stories, oh, he was a college swimming athlete, and he must have been on drugs. He drowned in the marina. No, he was electrocuted, and he was paralyzed, and he sank and drowned. So we design the system that gets that done. We then go out and test literally every single switch, every single breaker, every single thing to make certain you get exactly what you paid for. And to date, we've been doing this, we've required this for the last 6 years. We have yet to have a marina be correct the first time. It's just not possible. There's too many things that can go wrong. It can be an electric problem. It can be a simple miswiring. There's thousands of connections to be made. People are human. That's not a failing. We go through that process to make sure you get what you have. So when we hand it over to you and you say to your insurance company, hey, here's the certification report, that marina works. And when something happens and a boater comes in and says, hey, your marina's terrible, the electric doesn't work. No, it's not this, it's your boat. Your boat has a fault and those kinds of things. So this is what you're paying for, is to make certain that we're delivering you a product that you can sleep well at night, that I can sleep well at night, that if my kids are in that marina and they fall into the water, I'm gonna get them out as quickly as I can. But that's what you're paying for, is our expertise to deliver that product for you. And this is it's simply what it costs. And again, it'll be time and materials, and if we can go faster for whatever process, you're only gonna pay for what it costs.
I appreciate it. Again, you gave me an answer, okay. But I was looking for just a number.
It's gonna be based on exactly what the marina costs.
Okay, so what we're gonna be doing is gonna cost us over $12 million. Okay, but we're only, right now, we're only approving $3.4 million. All right, because that's what we're going to be voting on.
There's a construction cost
Right.
and a design fee cost.
Gotcha.
So I would come back, again, is what you're seeing on the screen is this is gonna get us to the place where we'll define all those different costs. What are the upland costs, what are the building costs? You'll at that point make a decision, we're gonna build X, Y, and Z. And if that means a breakwater and the marina system itself, and we're gonna leave the fuel and the other things off, we'll know what that is, you won't pay us to do that design work. It's that simple. The way the contract is written, you always have the ability to stop us at any moment. You can stop us, is it 7 days, I think it is, Kevin? 7 or 10 days. You can tell us and just say, listen, as of 7 days from now, hit the brakes and stop. We need to make a decision. That's always a part of the process.
All right, thank you.
Alder Decker.
Yes, thank you. I guess the one thing my concern over this, or that I would also add to the top two things I would add as a 2A or whatever is fuel system. The fuel system that's down there, I don't think is within anything that I feel comfortable with as a citizen. Being an underground tank near Lake Michigan is not a sustainable operation, I guess is.
If it's 30 years old, it's time.
Yes.
So, absolutely.
All right, seeing no more cues, I guess we can keep going.
That's our presentation.
Oh, that's it? All right, perfect, all right.
I can talk marinas for 3 more days.
No, that's perfect. I know how much more we had.
I'm a marina
or anything
nerd.
like that, so that's perfect.
Want to talk about boats? I love boats. Sailing in particular.
So, right now, we will have public comment. If you signed up, we'll call you. And then, do they have to state their address? You don't need to state your address, please just state your full name, and then, yeah, we'll go from there. So, first is...
He knows he's first. Peter Mayer.
Thank you. My name is Peter Mayer. I live at 5th in Michigan, own a business at 6th in Pennsylvania, spend much of my leisure time east of Broughton Drive, and am chair of Marina Parks and Forestry Commission. Sheboygan without a proper waterfront and marina is like Plymouth without cheese, Elkhart Lake without Road America, or Kohler without golf courses. Sheboygan's waterfront and marina is its culture, its essence, its tourist image, and enterprise. It's our historic past, our present, and our future. Through 30 years of Sheboygan's marina operations, we've learned that the docks and marina operations designed 30 years ago left docks unprotected from winter ice, created excess employment expense and reduced income because the Marina Administration Building is located so far away from the fuel dock, brought operational losses through including low-quality marina store with insufficient inventory turns and excess labor costs instead of independent private sector businesses to operate it. We've learned that the cost of the marina pool is not free initial construction, but the ongoing maintenance expense. And installing underground fuel tanks near a waterway may be more visually appealing, but it's not prudent. It adds excess insurance cost and recurring excess replacement costs. We've learned that it's necessary to properly integrate the marina boaters and visitors with the 8th Street Bid District restaurants and retailers to obtain higher slip occupancy levels, added income for local businesses. We've learned that not repairing the most profitable dock after ice damage will significantly negatively impact financial performance. Enabling a marina operator without a food and beverage experience to take over a struggling wine bar will only increase losses. We've also learned that a marina operator cannot be left without significant oversight and monitoring. A marina requires ongoing internal quality control assessment and external promotion in the boating community. Most significantly, we've learned that by not providing for winter boat storage and marine repair like Manitowoc has done, we've excluded the highest profit center elements of a marina operation. As if it's good enough for the Green Bay Packers to get into the red zone, but not get into the end zone. We've figured a lot of things out. Edgewater has the experience and expertise to bring us that next step forward. Many of the capital improvement expenses relate to the land park as a whole rather than to the marina itself, which is why the Marina Parks and Forestry Commission has recommended unanimous design and marina docks and go slow for other building and facility elements at the land park and continue to test them for financial contribution and community interest. With quality management and thorough oversight, we've seen that even in its hobbled condition, the marina operations can make money in our community. The community spoke overwhelmingly last year through numerous public forums confirming that Sheboygan wants a proper marina facility. Now it's time for our elected alders to bring us the marina that can not just be an amenity, but also a successful business operation. The proper next step is to hire the engineering firm with a proven track record of designing a financially successful marina. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Michael Froh?
I'm a boater with 60-plus years of experience boating out of Sheboygan, and we cruise extensively. We've cruised the Great Lakes, we've cruised the Caribbean, and also Europe. I've been in a lot of marinas. And, you know, it's been said that marinas, particularly Sheboygan's marina, cannot make a profit. As Greg mentioned, both publicly owned and private marinas certainly can operate at a profit, or they wouldn't exist. There are marinas, again, all over. You look at the desirability of Sheboygan. I mean, we've got a cruise ship now that's named Sheboygan as a destination. We have so much more to offer than so many other communities around the Great Lakes that have marinas. It's time for Sheboygan to step up and get the marina it deserves. I've served on the Marina Commission for many years. I'm former chair of that commission. We worked very, very closely with Skipper Buds as an operator initially. But when we made the decision actually go to F3, we just saw things spiraled out of control with the marina. We lost all of our 50-foot docks about 4 years ago, 2/3 of our 45-foot docks. The larger boats bring in the most revenue, including, of course, fuel sales, and they're spending money in the community. So when we lost that, things just continued to get worse and worse and worse. And I think that's one of the reasons I think the public was kind of down on the marina, but it just deteriorated beyond that. I encourage you to please work with Edgewater. I think the presentation tonight was absolutely excellent. They're the right firm to work with. I think it's important to the economic well-being of Sheboygan, as well as the quality of life that we all enjoy here. So, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Eric.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Eric Cotty. I live here in Sheboygan. There's a lot of talk about the marina's inability to cover its costs. This has been true. However, it is possible for marinas to be run in a way where they don't lose money year over year, as we've heard tonight. The reasons for the losses, in my opinion, fall directly on the shoulders of city officials. Third-party marina operators have managed the marina for the city for the majority of the marina's life. I don't feel the city had great oversight to those operators for those decades. The city should have written contracts in a way that incentivized the operators to fill more slips and break even or even turn a profit. I do support the use of third-party operators, and I don't want to see the Harbor Center managed directly by the city for much longer. I will say I kind of changed my opinion on that statement tonight, though. It's my opinion that Edgewater is the best choice to manage and implement the project. It is also my opinion that Sheboygan needs to always have a nice marina. It's part of what makes this city Sheboygan. There's been a level of chatter in the community that does not support the marina. That chatter can be nicely summed up by a question posed by Lisa Salgado on social media platform Nextdoor recently. Why should I have to pay for somebody's hobby? She asks. To me, that statement shows a marked level of closed-mindedness. Okay, then let's see. Pickleball. Seems like the city is sinking a lot of money into building new courts, converting tennis courts. Why should I have to pay for it? I don't play pickleball. I don't play disc golf either. The city is spending money on that. Why should I pay? Look at all that expensive playground equipment in the parks. I don't have kids, and I don't think it would be appropriate for me to play on that stuff myself. Why should I have to pay for it? Picnic shelters and buildings in parks that I have to pay a fee to use. Why should I pay $250 to rent the community building at DeLand Park? My tax dollars built those. A fee to use a city amenity? Bus service, man, they lose a lot of money every year. I don't ride the bus, why should I pay? Why doesn't the city raise fares so that all the costs are covered? Skate park, recreation department, uptown social, so many amenities in this wonderful city that I pay for but don't use myself. Why should I pay? Don't get me started on the school system. I'll tell you why I should pay. Because they are all part of what makes Sheboygan a wonderful place to live and a wonderful place for people to visit. Yes, I believe the marina was grossly mismanaged over its lifetime. It can and must do better in the future. That doesn't mean we should just give up on it. Nearly all, if not all, promotional photos and videos of our great city feature the marina, and it's part of what Sheboygan is. To those in the why should I pay crowd, I ask, should we really just be aiming for the lowest common denominator, or should we aim for something better, something special, something Sheboygan? I ask the committee to pass the unamended resolution tonight, entering into contract with Edgewater to move ahead with our marina refresh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Clark.
Hey.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm Rebecca Clark, 735 Fairway Drive. Committee members, thank you for your time. I'm a member of your Marina Parks and Forestry Board, and I'm also on the county board. I'm not speaking on behalf of any of them tonight, but just wanted to offer my some thoughts. The Marina Parks and Forestry Board is your board. We are here to offer you advice because everyone on this board has either some experience in parks and forestry, like myself, or they are they own boats or have worked in the marina. I think we are a tremendous resource to this committee because of our specific experience and expertise. So I want to speak specifically about my support for the marina and its improvements and inclusion in all of your planning for the city. I can tell you from my experience on the county, we encountered something very similar with our airport. I do not own a plane. I do not own a boat in the marina, but I do recognize the importance of the airport for our international businesses. I understand the importance of the marina to our companies like our charter fishing companies and the way that it can, I don't want to say expose, but open us up to tourism opportunities. I just think it is important. And as a former city employee, I can tell you I have a long history with marina parks and forestry. I want the marina to be safe, attractive, and off the tax levy. That is what the county had to look at with the airport, which means I wanted to cover its expenses and eventually contribute back to its own maintenance and maybe even in the future contribute to the city coffers. I want to thank Nick for really doing a tremendous job in the last year with very tough position. So to this end, I support the major infrastructure efforts we are looking at for the marina with some suggestions. The process needs, number one, needs to be more transparent, and I hate that term. I know it's thrown around a lot. What do I mean? It means it is very hard as a committee member of the Marina Parks and 40, and I think as residents, to get access to timelines, processes, and cost. Before our last meeting, which I think some of you were at, which was at a different time and was here, I was still gathering information an hour before the meeting with the market analysis, and I'm sure not everyone from this committee was there, and you certainly didn't have time to read our minutes or hear our discussion before you were doing your vote. So just in the future, I think that we need to work together on getting more information and even to our community members. This presentation is great. It's my second time, love it. But again, if this could be put, and people can watch this tonight, they can watch it after tonight. But it's before we get here tonight, and being able to review that information and ask questions or reach out to you or to me is where it would be really beneficial. So in moving forward, these are big projects. I think we just need to have information out there so that questions can be asked, so we all feel comfortable in our vote. I'm out of time. It's a big project. Ask questions, talk to me, let's work together. But I think we should move forward, and I think you are voting on a very big dollar bill tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last person is Michael Burnett.
Mike Burnett.
All right, you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, all right. And it's like numbers online and social media. There is no such thing. Media is media. Numbers are numbers. It's who stands behind the numbers. And the only person I know putting numbers out there for the most part is me. And I got quite a good track record. I used to be the data analyst for the ABC Sports A unit. If you heard Lynn Swan or Bob Greasy say something smart back in the day regarding numbers, I was the guy with a paper and pencil in the back of the truck. And it's kind of like, I did it for newspapers forever. And it's kind of like, you're literally going on saying this at 14 million, this, that, da, da, da. We're spending 3 million something here. We already spent whatever with the Smith Group, but it sounds like we're gonna go back on that pretend to talk to the city thing. I went to all those meetings. I went to all the stuff on the skate park too. And everybody wanted some version of a pool. The only point of contention at Kiwanis Park was when you had the fishermen and the boatermen about, oh, who should get it? It's all gone. I'm also told on good authority that basically our head dog in this whole game of the city of Sheboygan literally went into the group when the Smith Group was going and told them that he never wanted to hear anything about a pool again. How come everything else along the lakefront and whatever, we build stuff with pools, that's gone. Whatever, you go on, you're telling me this is gonna be like 14 million? We're spending another 3.5 million, not to mention all the planning stuff. And it's like, and we're only gonna be spending 14, whatever, this and that. I'm pretty sure I even heard Casey say at one point that they're projecting our 60. This is one of those steps, just like the Milwaukee trolley. When you do that first part, you're gonna spend the rest of it. You spend this, you're spending 70. So they also said your real cost is in the maintenance. And I'll ask you, What did they call the ship? Anybody in here that sailed after the Hindenburg, that company sailed? Does anybody know the name of it? No. How about whatever after the Titanic? Titanic 2? No, because that's how you learn. When you're saying you learn the little micros, you didn't learn any of that. Your numbers are ridiculous. You're building something, no matter what you build would serve as a postcard. You're literally doing a checkbox for tourism, no matter what you did would do that. And when you go into opportunity cost, I have a graphic that works with $1 billion on the last marina.
All right, thank you. Alrighty, anybody else?
What else this evening?
Alrighty, we will move to item number 8, resolution number 109-25-26 by Alderpersons Decker and Rust, authorizing the appropriate city officials to enter into a contract for architectural design, engineering, and construction administration services regarding Harbor Center Marina and associated facilities at 821 Broughton Drive. Well, hold on, I was going to ask, is there any comment? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion.
I make a motion to approve or recommend to the common council to approve this.
Okay, looking for a second. All right, Alder Decker made the motion, Alder Bellinger made the second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. That will be sent to common council. Seeing as we don't have anything else on the agenda, I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, somebody make a second. All right, Alder Bellinger made the motion. Alder Mitchell made the second. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 7:01. Thank you, everybody.